What is going on, Only Playbook fans? We are back for another week. 2 weeks are in the books. We have a lot to talk about. Unfortunately, injuries have riddled the fantasy football world. So never a awesome thing to have to talk about, but is the inevitable in fantasy football. 2 weeks in, how are you guys weathering the storm that is fantasy football injuries? Shashot, I'll start with you.
Dude, before we begin, check this out.
Damn.
Yo.
Look at that. Look at that. Little surprise from the wifey.
That is sick.
Dude,
I love that.
That's
Right?
nice.
Right?
Why would you not
Yeah,
make
well-
that your background? Oh, okay. You are making that your background.
Yeah, it's my background.
That was a surprise. Okay. Nice. That's lit.
But yeah, so as far as injuries go, dude, I think this might be worse than last year. I just totaled up all the injuries by week 2. Remember, I gave like a really, really large number last year. Do you guys remember that? We are on pace to break that record this year. So that's how things are going.
Shove, you surviving?
I'm surviving right now. Haven't had any sort of like big injuries. The Tua situation sucks for Tyreek Hill owners. But hopefully, Skylar Thompson comes in and continues to feed Tyreek Hill. But I haven't had any players that I am concerned about as far as injuries, like explicit injuries to them. So I'm lucked out so far.
Yeah, it seems like there's teams. It seems like the teams that are getting hit, at least from the 2 leagues that I've witnessed, have multiple players, which is ironic. Both the leagues that I'm in that are important to me both had CMC and then came back and had Puka. So they both had CMC Puka, Ishan in our league and Bisum in the other league, and they both went down. So what a crazy 1 and 2, because I think Puka ended up falling because of the injury concerns, and then CMC went 1. But man, that is just really, really unfortunate. And again, we have a lot to talk about. Hopefully it's 2 weeks in, so this isn't the end. Even if you're that team that I sent that screenshot of, that seems very, very Photoshopped that you could have an entire team that all got injured. But regardless, we hopefully have some solutions, both long-term and short-term, to help you continue to chug along, because the season is long. And so definitely don't want to throw in the towel yet. How we kick things off. Again, new format started last episode. So if you're tuning in new, we are going to recap how we did. We had our start sits, our boom busts, our hidden gems, and our survivor picks. So we want to recap how we did so that people can at least understand if the advice we're giving out is in fact good advice or bad advice. So it's a really good way to track that. And then we will talk about, are we sounding the alarm or are we staying calm? I think we had last week a bunch of players on there. Some players dropped off, but there are some players that have made it 2 weeks in a row. So I think those players warrant some additional conversation. And then obviously, since tonight waiver wires hit, we have the waiver wire watch list for the players you need to grab with all of these injuries hitting really, really hard and really fast for some of you. So without further ado, guys, let's kick things off with how did we do? So start sits last week, we had Jayden Daniels versus Patrick Mahomes, which ironically Jayden Daniels ended up winning, but neither player had a good week. I think it was 13.4 to 12.9. I think that'll be a theme that you guys will hear is quarterbacks had a shitty week. So either way, whoever you play, Jayden Daniels ended up being the guy who scored more, but neither of them were players that you were happy with. Jayden Daniels with 13.4 still outscored Josh Allen, Anthony Richardson, Dak Prescott, Justin Herbert, and Justin Fields. So I would say it was a pretty weak week for fantasy quarterbacks. Jaylen Wright and Jeff Wilson, we had talked about it with the injury to Raheem Mostert, ended up kind of being a non-factor. Whether you started one or the other, you probably weren't happy with either or, because Devon Achane, in a game in which they continued to be up, continued to be winning, was still on the field, even when the starting receivers were not. So I found that to be a little bit strange. But I think it was the situation where Mostert got hurt, and I think Wilson also got hurt. And for whatever reason, down the stretch, even though the game was in hand, they didn't want to give the rookie Jaylen Wright the touches. So they fed Achane. Yeah, so could have been bad. Did end up working out for them. So a non-issue there. We talked about Jordan Mason versus Rhamondre Stevenson. I think it was a no-brainer with Jordan Mason, although we did like both players to start, and both players ended up having good weeks. So if you started either one of those or both of those, you were pretty happy with that. I don't know who saw Calvin Ridley booming this week, but Calvin Ridley took the cake against Keon, Coleman, getting Sauce Gardner treatment and still coming down with a fantastic week. So if you were somebody that had no options and somehow started Calvin Ridley despite it being a bad matchup and a bad situation, you ended up reaping the benefits. So kudos to you.
Well, on that front, right? Like Will Levis actually played pretty well last game. He didn't play bad at all. And some of those long deep bombs were very accurate. So I think that Ridley's definitely a guy that, we can't shy away from Will Levis, because the fact that he throws the ball deep so much makes Ridley a viable fantasy option. So it's a lesson learned, but now we know, that Will Levis can become relevant.
It is the offensive coordinator from the Cincinnati Bengals from a couple of years ago. So there's going to be a lot of throwing, whether you like Will Levis or not. The ball's going to be up in the air a lot this year, and it's going to come out to be fantasy points for the quarterback and the wide receiver. The thing about Ridley is he's always been a target for me since before the season started. It's a big offense, a lot of passing. He's a good receiver. Doesn't matter. You got to have him on your team. But he does face Sauce Gardner next, Jair Alexander next, and he does face Ramsey next, and then he gets a bye week. So it's going to be a pretty up and down thing. But again, it's 2 weeks. We can't start making decisions on who we want on our team, who we don't want, especially if it's people we've been targeting up until now.
Jameson Williams versus Xavier Worthy. This was a talk of the town, and I think the numbers would dictate that it was Jameson Williams. 5 catches, 79 yards on 11 targets. 11 targets, 92% snap participation. What did we talk about? Numbers matter, brother. Xavier Worthy, 2 catches on 17 yards and 4 targets, 1 rush, 5 yards. Jameson Williams actually had a rush for 15 yards. 92% of the times he was on the field. Xavier Worthy only 68%. So obviously we know Pacheco got hurt. We know Travis Kelce hasn't performed. Probably going to trend with Xavier Worthy seeing the field more, but right now you need to have Jameson Williams in your lineup definitively.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys disagree with that, but I think he's a lineup lock.
No, I agree, man. I was on the Worthy side in this case, and I was wrong on this one. But the targets from back-to-back weeks like this, it's just to be sought out for. And the thing about Xavier Worthy is that throw, that one-handed catch that the cornerback made was a throw to Xavier Worthy. So you want things like that to happen for you. But even then, I think Jameson Williams is still the receiver to get.
I can't believe somebody chose Worthy over Williams here after that boom week from Williams with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Worthy, dude, he weighs the same weight as I do, like 165. Like, it's just, we're tiny people and we're talking about the NFL. There's a lot of things that you want to target before you start targeting a 165 guy.
Yeah.
George Pickens against, you got something?
No, I mean, the play was the fact that Cincinnati Bengals rush defense is so bad that I just thought that they would continue to give him the ball like those running plays that we saw, but clearly that wasn't it. Go for volume. Jameson Williams next time.
Relying on receivers to run the football, probably not a recipe for success in fantasy football, right?
Unless you're Debo.
All right. Yeah. George Pickens versus Michael Pittman Jr. Did you start one of them? If you did, you probably weren't happy. Pickens 3.9, Pittman 3.6. Pickens did have a couple of pass interferences and had a touchdown called back. But the reality is he also still ended up putting up 3.9 fantasy points. That is the world that you live in with Justin Fields. Again, he gets all their targets. So he is the player you want on the team. But you're going to have boom weeks. You're going to have bust weeks. My fear is more with Michael Pittman Jr. This offense, as great as Shane Steichen is, we don't know for sure that Anthony Richardson is capable of running this offense because right now he can't complete passes over the linebackers in the middle of the field. And that's where Michael Pittman makes all of his bread and butter. So that is the concern. He was a PPR machine last year because they fed him the ball in the middle of the field. That's what Gardner Minshew did. But Richardson, I know it's only 2 games, but the passing is definitely a concern.
Yeah. I mean, I want to add some things to that. Pickens, I don't think anybody should be starting Pickens until Russell Wilson gets onto the field, just because it's a run first offense with a run first quarterback. We can bank on touchdowns because they're likely going to Pickens, because who else are you throwing to right now? But it's just, again, not a recipe for success. And then Pittman's side of things, he still leads the team in targets. It's not like he's like not getting looked at. 8 targets is 7 targets this game, and I think he had even more than that last game, I forget. But leading the team in targets, that'll probably get better, but the volume isn't there. They throw the ball like 20 times a game because they're banking on deep bombs from Anthony Richardson. It works out for Anthony Richardson because he just needs to hit on 3 of those and then a couple rushing yards, boom, running QB1 for the week. But for the wide receivers, we're going to have to start throwing the ball a little bit more and a little bit shorter in the field to have success throughout, especially because Downs is coming back as well.
I don't know if you guys paid attention to this, to the level that Jonathan Taylor just got benched in the 4th quarter. No injury, no nothing. He was the only thing that was working for the Colts. He was running at 8 yards a clip. And in the 4th quarter, they completely benched him, didn't play. Trey Sermon saw the entirety of the field. When they asked him afterwards, they said that they weren't designing plays for the running back.
What a dumb answer.
sense whatsoever. So if you're a Jonathan Taylor owner, you are scratching your head at why the hell the best thing about your offense was not on the field in the fourth quarter. I personally had him in a bet, so I think that's why I was additionally invested in that. But the reality is he was the only thing working, and they took him off the field. So kind of a head scratcher there. But I don't know. We'll talk more about that. Terry McLaurin against Cortland Sutton. That was another one to show. You had brought up Terry McLaurin ends up with 5.2 points, Sutton with 3.1. What I had mentioned, and I'm going to keep hammering home until we see otherwise, is you can't start a pass catcher for Bo Nix. He looks very just not good. He doesn't look good, and I don't know that he can. The target share for Sutton in week 1 is incredible. It wasn't there in week 2. It's not to say that the target share won't be there, but to me, this seems like a classic case of we're going to see air yards and targets to Cortland Sutton, and then the production is not going to be there because the quarterback just isn't quite capable. So again, with Terry McLaurin, showed, I know you had him as your start of the week. Still not what we like to see. He saw 8 targets. He caught 6 balls, although it was only 22 yards.
At the line of scrimmage. We got to stop throwing those screen passes. Go ahead. I was going to say, just before we finish up on Sutton, I think the volume will be there. It's the whole Joey Porter situation right here going on. You know, the first week they had a strict game plan to getting the ball towards Sutton. But this week, I think they just shied away from going towards that side of the field. I think that's the main factor here. Not so much that, the Broncos offense sucks. I'm not going to shy away from that. But look at Daniel Jones. You can still get the ball to his wide receiver 1. I think that's kind of what the philosophy here is. The Sutton will get his. I think it's actually a very good buy low option here. You're going to get him for trash. You're going to get him from some people have probably already dropped him. And I think wide receiver 1 on any given team, that's always going to be coming from behind against, especially in a division like that. I think that's somebody you need to stash because it's week 2. Things are about to go up only from here.
Hollywood Brown, Keenan Allen, thanks for the question. Oh no, neither of them played, so did not freaking matter. Brian Robinson Jr. was the obvious start over Tank Dell, 14.1 points. Wow, Robinson Jr. looked incredible. It's his backfield. I think he's the 1A. Eckler, sorry, you're the backup. And Tank Dell, you are a complete afterthought in this offense right now. So hate that you're the best friend of CJ Stroud, but in offenses, when you're not the first read or the second read, you can be his best friend. He just doesn't have time to see you. So that's the reality that we live in. It's not to say Dell won't have boom weeks, but can you consistently put him in your lineup week in and week out? I absolutely cannot. I would consider putting Cortland Sutton in my lineup over Tank Dell because he's your wide receiver 1 versus a wide receiver 3, despite who I think is more talented or what offense is better. Brian Thomas Jr. almost put down a dud, but came up late and had 10.4 points on 2 catches for, 95 yards or something like that. Lad McConkey, 3.6 points. So Brian Thomas takes the cake there. Malik Nabers absolutely boomed. He was my boom of the week. My goodness, 18 targets, 23.7 points. Wide receiver 3, 63% target share, which is the highest for a wide receiver in any single game since 2013. So I think we can stamp the boom and boom that boom because that was the extra mega boom that anybody that started Malik Nabers would have expected or wanted. So hopefully more work like that. Again, what I'm going to add in caveat to that is Commanders suck. The Commanders secondary is bad. I'm going to say that every single week until they make changes. So any receivers that are playing against them, you should expect numbers like this. But also, Malik Nabers is an uber talented wide receiver. He is amongst the alphas in the NFL. Don't get it twisted with Daniel Jones throwing the football. It really doesn't matter. Packers wide receivers busted to a sense, I guess, with Malik Willis. Jayden Reed had 5.6 points. Christian Watson, complete goose egg. You had Romeo Doubs, who ended up with 7.7 if you were, ballsy enough to start him. And if you were the ballsiest to start Dontavian Wicks in a week where Malik Willis played, he got 10.1. So kudos to you. You must be the king. But most likely you probably didn't start him. So it means the Packers wide receivers absolutely busted. They ran the ball 50-something times, I believe. Jacobs touched it 35 times. So the recipe was there. I don't know how the Colts weren't able to stop it, but the wide receivers did not produce. The Colts, same game. Shovit, you talked about A.D. Mitchell. Unfortunately, that offense just cannot get it going. Anthony Richardson has to be able to complete passes for receivers to be relevant, right? And that just isn't the case right now. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I mean, you guys have talked about Anthony Richardson enough to know that he's just not completing passes, and that's going to be a problem for all the receivers. So A.D. Mitchell did not boom like I suggested it, but Pittman did bust 3.6 points only. Although he had 7 targets, he did not get the fantasy points that you wanted. So all the receivers from Colts did not do well this week.
Yeah, the offense as a whole, you could argue. I mean, Jonathan
Right.
Taylor had a pretty good day, if you're okay with that, but he should have had so much more. So the Colts offense as a whole is in a little bit of a trouble. We already talked about Terry McLaurin. Obviously, he got much more volume than he did week one, but we still want to see that to be productive. You talked about Anthony Richardson being your bust. It seemed like we were kind of on a full fade of the Colts, and it kind of worked out. So Anthony Richardson, again, it's crazy. Have we ever in the history of the NFL seen a guy that can complete like last week, he completed 9 footballs and he had 27 fantasy points, right? That doesn't seem like on a week-to-week basis, you're going to be able to get away with completing 9 to 10 footballs and having that level of fantasy success. I mean, at some point, I get it. You're a run-first quarterback. Like, you have that physical specimen to you. But at some point, 9 passes, like if you're in a PPR league with any of these pass catchers, you're starting none of them. And that is a real concern because there's just not enough footballs being caught. And so I think in 2 weeks, I think the rest of the season, that's going to get figured out. It's only 2 weeks, but definitely something that's worrisome.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably my bust call of the year. That might be the bust call of the year. I'm not sure most people were expecting a player that was number 1 quarterback overall or number 2, 3 in people's eyes was going to bust this early. But I mentioned to you guys, the Packers secondary is no joke. They play super contained defense. And if you can't throw it deep on them, you can't do anything if your name is Anthony Richardson. We already knew his limitations, and I was just exploiting that. But I think that improves every game moving forward because he's going to learn from this.
Chargers defense, Colts defense, and Jags defense were the defenses that we had talked about. Chargers, obviously, you're targeting anybody that takes down the Panthers. That is a no-brainer. They ended up with 11 points. Colts and Jags D, only 3, although I think both of them held their offenses relatively in check. There was just no turnover, sacks, things like that. So modest week on the defensive front. McLaughlin, 10.5 points. Cairo Santos, 11.7 points. You both boomed on the kickers there. Boswell, measly 9.3 points. I guess I'd still take it, but not the double digits that we would want in terms of boom. And the weekly Pickem. Congratulations, Shovit. After 2 weeks, you have already secured the victory for the survivor pool of 2024 because the upset this week of the Raiders beating the Ravens was the demise for me. So I take the L. Shishot, you had the Chiefs beating the Bengals, so you are back on the board. And Shovit,
Barely.
you moved to 2-0, taking the Chargers over the Panthers. Congratulations, brother.
Yeah, feels great.
Yeah.
Get a victory speech here? Are we getting a victory speech?
The 2-0. Any words?
No, just on to next week. It's all about next week.
Yep. So we're officially, obviously, like we talked about last week, changing that to a pick 'em, because if Shovit loses next week, then the game is over, and there's no fun in that. So that is the How Do We Do segment, and we want to recap that every week just so we can look back on the advice that we're giving and making sure we're giving good advice. All right. Moving right along, are you guys ready to talk about these players that some people are trying to sound the alarm, but I want to make a case for staying calm on some of these guys? And we'll start with some guys that are reoccurs on this list. Zamir White, 5.3 fantasy points this week. Through 2 weeks now, he has 8.9 fantasy points. This week, just 9 carries, 24 yards. He did see 4 targets through the air, caught 3 of them for 14 yards. His snap percentage increased from week 1, 38% to week 2, 63%. So you like to see that he was on the field more. And in a game script that was more favorable where you thought Madison would catch passes, but all of the passing work went to Zamir White. So from week 1, where Alexander Madison was the guy that saw the field more, now week 2, Zamir White sees the field more. But what we're seeing is that this offense is not going to see a ton of rushing opportunities because they're going to play from behind. They're not going to see a ton of red zone opportunities because, again, they're not a great offense. So it really, really limits the upside of Zamir White. Are you guys staying calm here still, or are you guys sounding the alarm? Shishot, I'll start with you.
Dude, I like to really, really trust myself, and I think I'm still going to not alarm too much. Again, I'm not a big alarm guy in week 2 from the beginning, but when it comes to players that I have some faith in, I'm not going to pull the alarm just yet because the schedule is much better than playing the Ravens, and the Chargers are they're not just getting picked because they're playing the Panthers. They have a really good defense, and we're going to talk about that some other time, I'm sure. But now Zamir White faces the Carolina Panthers. We got a Cleveland team which can't put up a lot of points, so the rushing game can be active at any given point in the game. And then we play Denver, who also can't really put up a lot of points. So the rushing won't really get erased like it's been getting erased for them for the last couple of games from simply just not working. So I think, with the value pick you made to have him, you don't really have to alarm up everything just yet. I would stay put for 2 more weeks, see if we can put up like some, 2 weeks of 15 or more points, that's a clear-cut trade waiting to happen with all these injuries looming around everywhere. You can probably pull some crazy strings. But as of right now, I am still sticking because there's not enough evidence to say that there is another player better or there's a specific reason that this can't work out. There's just not enough evidence for me to pull the alarm just yet.
Yeah, same. So I do have some shares of Zamir White, and I think that they definitely had like goal line, carries this last game. Devontae Adams, when he scored a touchdown, that was from the goal line, like 2 yards line, right? So I think there's definitely opportunities, and I have hope in this Raiders offense as well. Once they start using Brock Bowers, Devontae Adams, there's a lot of guys that are talented in this team. So I definitely think that this offense could be better, which is just going to help Zamir White's case in the long run. So I'm staying calm. I'm not as worried as maybe someone else might be.
You might be a little bit more calmer than me, though. I don't have faith in this offense. I think this offense sucks, but I do see the potential of having an RB1 even on a bad team.
I am sounding the alarm. I am completely on the opposite end of that. The reason why is, to me, the evidence. Yes, it's only 2 weeks, but after an entire offseason in which this man got so hyped up, from the team himself, right? He was the number one. They signed Madison, and they still said Zamir White is the guy. Madison has been a backup. He's an historical backup. Last year, Zamir White filled in and was great, right? So in the time he filled in, he was good. Madison's history, never been that good. Madison comes here as the backup. First game of the season, the first game. There's no injuries. There's no nothing, right? The first game, like you're scripting an entire offseason on the first game. And for the first game, that guy only saw the field for 44% of the time. That is the part that obviously takes me aback. Now I'm not going to trade him away. I'm not going to freak out, but that answer doesn't, like, for him to only see the field for 45% of the game in week 1 when he was the RB1 is the part that is just a little bit baffling to me. So that's why I'm more so sounding the alarm, but my situation's a little bit different. He was my hero RB and my RB1 in my hero RB team. And right now he's clearly not an RB1 on any fantasy football team, hero, zero, whatever you want to call it. So that volume, the amount that you're on the football field right now, although 65, 68% in week 2, still not enough on the field for a bad team in reverse game scripts to be banking on either inefficient volume or a touchdown. And so that's my biggest fear with Zamir White. All right, moving right along. Terry McLaurin, Shisho, you talked about it a little bit, so we can be quick with this one. 5.2 points,
not much
7.9 through 2 weeks, 28% target share, so he definitely was the leading target getter for the team. But the reason why I'm personally staying calm with Terry McLaurin is the average draft value for Terry McLaurin wasn't that great anyways, right? You drafted him. He was wide receiver 35 for ADP, so in a 12-man league, he is your flex at best. Anything that he does better than that is a bonus. You basically got a value. So right now, there's not really much to fear because he could be worse than that, but that's borderline already somebody who technically may not even start on your roster. So I think things are only going to get better. Again, they're very little pass catchers on the offense as a whole. If you believe in a rookie quarterback's progression as the season progresses, then you have to factor in the number one receiver or pass catcher on that team. So right now, I am still staying calm simply because of ADP on Terry McLaurin. Shobit, anything to add there?
Yeah, so I do have Terry McLaurin as my 4th wide receiver on a 2-flex team. So he has been starting for the last 2 weeks, but now if I can get my hands on one of the Rams receivers, I might consider starting them at least for the next week or so until we see Jayden Daniels kind of throwing it, further than 10 yards down the line. And so I understand the targets are there. I'm not going to trade him away, but I am going to consider starting a Rams receiver instead with the Puka and then Cooper Kupp injury.
I would be a little bit careful doing that just because of everything Sweetcard just said. Things are looking better. They're going to be better every week, and we already know who the number one is versus you're picking a Rams team with a player who you don't know who the number one is. You could potentially get the 3rd wide receiver or the 2nd wide receiver. So using your exact idea right now, I would still pick, if you're going to choose between McLaurin and a Rams receiver, I'd probably still start McLaurin just because you've gone through this much, been through this much. It's just going to get better. That's the only reasoning. I can see the boom possibilities from the Rams guys, but for consistency from your 4th flex point area, I think the improvement is what I'm going to bank on.
Yeah,
we're gonna talk about the Rams receivers too in a little bit, but I would say something to keep in mind is their offensive line is so depleted that I just don't even know if Stafford's going to get 2 seconds to throw the football. And that was pretty visible this past week. 4 out of the 5 offensive linemen are hurt. And so It's just like, I don't know. I think the Rams are in like a holy crap, our season could be over in 2 weeks kind of situation if something crazy doesn't happen, like a major trade gets swung or something like that, because they have no protection for Stafford. They have no receivers to throw the football to. I think this is a world where Blake Corum could just naturally get utilized more because he's a weapon. Like, he doesn't have to be their running back, but rather than throwing Jordan Whittington and Tyler Johnson and Demarcus Robinson, maybe they use Blake Corum more. So that's my fear with anything Rams related, is the offensive line is so bad that every single drive that the Rams had a chance to put some points back on the board last week, they couldn't, because there was just no protection whatsoever. So that would be my only reservation with the offense as a whole.
Yeah, just to add, when I say sound the alarm, I don't have any other receivers on this bench of mine. They're all running backs, and Jayden Daniels is the quarterback. So now I'm like, okay, maybe I need to start looking at receiving options, whether it be Rams or some other team. Yeah.
Dalton Kincaid, 7.3 fantasy points this week, an uptick from last week, but through 2 weeks, 9.4, only 4 targets though, 4 catches, 33 yards. Here's the kicker. Only 42% of the snaps he was on the field. That is a cause for concern. Now, obviously, game script is always important, but still getting 21% of the target share while only seeing 42% of snaps. I would say that number kind of balances itself out. So if they're in a situation where maybe they're going to have to throw more, he should see the field more. But Khalil Shakir led the team in targets with 5, so not that far off from Kincaid. And it was a reverse game script. Like I said, they were winning the whole time, so they had to run the football quite a bit with James Cook. Shobit, I'll start with you. Dalton Kincaid, are you staying calm or are you sounding the alarm?
I think you have to stay calm because every tight end has been doing poor, and like on average, like I don't know where Dalton Kincaid is as far as top tight ends are concerned and the points, but that's just the tight end landscape at this rate right now. So you just hold on, and hopefully things change for the Bills. And they're using James Cook more. They're running the ball often. They're passing the ball around to all these different options. It is alarming, but you really can't do anything about it right now. You got to hold and hope for the best for the future.
Yeah, I mean, you have to stay calm because of where Dalton Kincaid was drafted. If you drafted him as if you're getting like a Hawkinson from last year, which was never going to be the case. It's just people think like it's so easy to lose players like Diggs and Gabe, who are getting so many targets, and replace them with a tight end and get similar like numbers. That's not how football works. He still has to be at the line when he's running. He still has to go through people. So it's like things closer to the line. So it was never going to be like super boom type of stuff for me personally. But I'm personally staying away from all Bills-related receivers, all Packers-related receivers, all Jags-related receivers, and all Colts-related receivers if I'm starting a player. Those guys are all chilling on my bench for the time being. Dalton Kincaid is a unicorn in that he can play tight end, and he does good at it. So right now, not pulling anything. No alarms are getting pulled right now, but expectations are back where they used to be last year as far as, it's Josh Allen. He'll do whatever the fuck he wants. There is no game script here. The man just does what he wants, and it works out every single time. So I don't think that's going to change either.
Yeah, I'm staying calm as well, simply because nobody has emerged as the top guy yet. If we had somebody be like, oh, this guy's getting 12 targets a game, maybe they're the number one favorite. There's not that guy yet. The ball's been spread out through 2 weeks. Pretty spread. I mean, I think week 1, the highest target getter was Coleman with 5. Week 2, Shakir with 5, right? So neither of those is going to make those players fantasy viable. So at some point, one player has to emerge as the guy, whether they're getting 7, 8 targets. And I'm still fairly confident that player is going to be Dalton Kincaid once they realize that, hey, running offense, working great. What happened to the passing offense? It's not working as well anymore. Maybe we should get some of our better players involved. So I am still staying calm with Dalton Kincaid. We've already kind of talked about Michael Pittman Jr., so I'm going to skip that one. Amari Cooper, 4.1 fantasy points, 7.7 through 2 weeks, 8 targets, only 3 catches on 11 yards, did play 88% of the snaps, 24% target share, tied with Elijah Moore. His next 3 games are the Giants, Vegas, and then the vaunting secondary of the Washington Commanders. Shashot, are you sounding the alarm on Amari Cooper?
I pulled an alarm on him 3 years ago, but he always makes points. He always does things certain weeks to like stay alive. This isn't somebody I would ever want on my fantasy team. I'd still take Terry McLaurin. He's like the Mookie Betts? What's that line in baseball where like you pass that threshold? Line? The Mendoza line, aka the Kirk Cousins line, aka the Amari Cooper line in wide receiving world, right? So I think Amari Cooper is below that line, especially because he plays in this offense now. This offense it's a mess. I think it is going to get better. And believe it or not, there are way worse quarterbacks than Watson if there's a good offensive line in front of him. I'm going to stay right there in the middle, and I'm going to pull the alarm. but I'm going to pull it slightly just so the alarm rings, but I'm not going to pull it all the way down so it's caught on the camera. So, yeah, I'm going to pull the alarm because it's just a little scary, but get ready for the next 3 weeks to make him a serious trade bait and get him out of your team.
Yeah, Amari Cooper's not a guy that's on my alarm list. I'm actually excited for Amari Cooper because watching Deshaun Watson last week, he looked like Deshaun Watson for the Texans, right? Like he was making some seriously good plays, extending the pocket and all of that kind of stuff. What we're used to seeing. And even if you go to week 1, you saw throws that were accurate. And Amari Cooper is a great route runner. If they can find a way to get these quick passes and Deshaun Watson can connect, I think that you've seen him be consistent throughout last year, and you can expect that moving forward as well. So I'm actually pretty excited for Amari Cooper for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I would say I'm, this is probably a cop out, but I'm kind of right in between both of you guys with Amari Cooper. I'm not sounding the alarm, but I'm also not super calm about it either. The reality is because he is a number 1 receiver. He has been for quite some time now. He's not your alpha number 1 receiver, but he's a very, very solid, dependable number 1 receiver. He has these types of weeks. And then if you go look at his stats last year, he still had, 80 catches, 1,000 yards, a handful of touchdowns. So he still ends up having production, but there is boom weeks. There are bust weeks, and Deshaun Watson's play has been so up and down that it gives me pause. So personally, I lean Shishot in the sense that I will hold on to him, watch him do really well against the Giants, watch him destroy the Commanders, and then immediately float that guy out there for trades. That's what I would do because I think people value Amari Cooper higher than I personally value him, and then they need to see these productive weeks, and the next handful of defenses should give him much more production that he's seen the first 2 weeks. Same team, guys. Jerome Ford, running back for the Browns, 6.9 fantasy points in week 2. Only 44% of the snaps, though he had 7 carries for a nice 64 yards, caught 1 pass for 0 yards on 2 targets. Deontay Foreman just signed. Was he just signed? I felt like he just got on the team.
No, he's been there, but he was hurt. He had a neck injury. And then he had a lot of carries in preseason, but he didn't play the first week very much. So people were like, oh yeah, Ford's the guy. Turns out there's some turmoil in the running back world on this team. If you had more things to say, go ahead. But if you didn't, I'm going to pull the alarm right now because I am in panic mode. They just signed somebody else, though. After Foreman, they signed somebody else. I forget who that guy is. But again, not feeling so great, especially with the offensive line doing the things they're doing. They're supposed to be top 3, maybe top 1 offensive line. It's not looking that way. From a rushing standpoint, the Browns are always a rushing team you want on your roster because of how often they rush. But when the game script is not going to be in your favor, most of the season, I don't know what to do. I'm not liking this. I do have Ford in a team, and he is currently starting because it's week 2, right? Like, I'm not a big alarm puller until week 4. I've told you this many times. You need more data points. You need to have higher sample size to make these type of decisions. But right now, if I could put somebody else above him in my lineup, but still keep him on my team, I'm definitely doing that. He's not going anywhere, but I am a little worried. I'm not going to lie.
Dude, I am so worried. Seeing Foreman out there, like all of those, like inside the red zone, it was just so alarming. And the sad part about it is like Jerome Ford was more efficient. Like he was making some solid running back plays. Like he looked like he should have been out there, but for whatever reason, they've decided to have a split backfield. Foreman, Pierre Strong's there as well. And so it's a mess, and I'm absolutely sounding alarm. But what can you do?
And we're doing all this alarming, and all this time Nick Chubb is rehabbing and getting stronger. So it's like, like if the whole reason I drafted Ford was so he can boom for the first 4-6 weeks until Nick Chubb can come in and take over the job. But now if that's not happening now, then dude, like when am I ever going to be confident in using Jerome Ford?
So 3 or 4 things here. One, I almost think that there is no timetable on Nick Chubb. So to me, he becomes an afterthought right now because why are they bringing in an additional running? The fact that Foreman is back and then they sign an additional running back, I would say, if anything, my brain starts to think, why are they bringing more guys on the roster? And so second thought, that adds to that, right? Jerome Ford, if in fact Nick Chubb is not going to come back, this is a run-first offense. So yes, they're going to run the hell out of the football. Foreman saw 14 carries for Deontay Foreman to Ford's 7, yet Foreman still only played 38% of the snaps. So again, this is a team that is going to run the shit out of the football. And now my thought process is, there is more fear and uncertainty around Nick Chubb, which means that they are probably going to have a running back committee, but it doesn't necessarily concern me with Ford because I didn't necessarily think Ford was going to be like an RB1 producer, but I do still think in a very heavy run-centric offense, he is still going to be utilized pretty capably. And I do think he's probably going to be the pass catcher over Foreman. So Foreman, 14 carries, way more, double what Ford got, but Ford was still on the field more than Foreman was. So I think they'll both be used, but I think that more attributes to the fact that I think Nick Chubb is an afterthought. And now I think you should probably go grab Foreman, but I think there's a world where they both can coexist. Obviously, she showed, like you mentioned, not to the level that you wanted Ford to be the guy before Chubb came back. But again, it's such a run-focused, heavy running offense that I think they'll both get to work. So not as much concern, but maybe that's just because my personal expectations weren't necessarily the greatest with Ford to begin with.
And if they were a good team, I would feel more comfortable, but they're not looking like a good team right now. It's kind of turmoilish. Look at the Chargers, same philosophy, almost the same offense. You got two running backs who are getting like 18 carries. Gus Edwards had 18 carries, and he still didn't do much with that, but he got the carries. And J.K. Dobbins had double digits carries and did wonderful with that. That offense looks fluid. That offense looks smooth. This offense, similar. They're getting the touches, but nothing's happening. And that's why Foreman's coming in to block because Ford is a smaller guy. That's the whole reason Foreman's out there that much anyway. So again, I don't know. We'll just have to see, monitor the situation for 2 more weeks.
I think, aren't they pretty depleted on the O-line as well? Like both their tackles are out or something like that?
Yes.
Yeah. So again, healthy, hopefully you would assume that as they get healthier again, the offensive line that we expected to be top 3 will be able to go back and run block. All right. Tank Dell, we kind of already talked about it. Do you guys have anything to add with Tank Dell right now? Where are your thoughts at with Tank Dell?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, like he's just a flex position number 4 opportunity, wide receiver 4. Anything higher would be kind of ludicrous, like as we saw last week.
Sucks for him because on a bad team he'd be wide receiver 1. It's just there's a potential Hall of Famer and there's a soon to be potential Hall of Famer in front of him, so it just sucks for Tank Dell right now.
Travis Kelce, let's talk about it, guys. 1.1 fantasy points, 6 fantasy points through 2 weeks, 91% snap counts, 3 targets, 1 catch for 5 yards. I know Taylor Swift was not happy about that. 12% target share. Rashee Rice saw 6 targets. Pacheco saw 5. Xavier Worthy saw 4. I am not panicked at all with Travis Kelce. I'll kick us off simply because Pacheco got hurt. The way we saw Travis Kelce get used last week is they overextended him a certain time. They realized that it's a long season, and then they deviated from using him a lot. And then that's when Rashee Rice boomed. And then towards the end, what happened? Kelce clutched up again and became the guy. So I think this is a situation where Kelce is older. Kelce is older, so they have to make sure that he is going to survive a 17-game season and the playoffs. So the usage that he sees, it's never going to be the Travis Kelce of old, in my opinion, but that's not to say that he's still not going to be probably a top 5 tight end finisher, simply because, again, now that Pacheco's hurt, they're probably going to run by passing, if that makes sense. Dinks and dunks, end arounds to Xavier Worthy. Samaje Perine will catch dump offs. They're bringing in Kareem Hunt. I mean, I don't know that Carson Steele, a fullback, is going to get 20 touches, although he's, pretty insane and physical and big. But I think there is a world where a lot of this short dump off intermediate stuff becomes the Chiefs running game right now, while Pacheco is in the abyss and rehabbing from this injury. And I think that's where Kelce is going to thrive. So I'm not sounding the alarm yet on Kelce, but I think just caveating on the expectations, you need to temper. And the reason why I'm going to bring this up, because I think this is important. Unel sent me a trade offer for Travis Kelce, and I just wanted to gauge where a Travis Kelce owner's head's at with what they are trying to expect in return, right? This is a guy, again, it's not just production. It's not like he's getting 10 targets a game and only saw 1 catch. This is a guy that right now is an afterthought in his own offense. He is not the number 1. Rashee Rice is the number 1. He's not the number 2. Pacheco, you could argue, is the number 2. The flashy guy right now is Xavier Worthy. So where does Kelce fit in here? So this is the trade that Unel offered me for kind of where he's gauging where Kelce is, right?
Sure.
So he offered me Travis Kelce and Jaylen Warren for Rhamondre Stevenson and Deebo Samuel.
Get the
Yeah.
All right.
That's a quick decline. That's good.
I wanted to make sure I didn't seem stupid when I was like, Unel, you for real, man?
I like those trades because it's so easy to hit decline on them. You don't even have to think about it.
Makes you feel good about your team, right? It's like, my team is so much better. Fuck that shit. No, but here's some real evidence. Everybody needs to relax. everybody needs to relax on pulling these alarms a little bit because it's week 2. I don't know how many times I got to say this. The Chiefs are just playing with us, okay? They're trying to use their new weapons and see if they can fit into the offense, adjust things accordingly. This is a highly intelligent offense. They're not going to just keep throwing the ball at Travis Kelce when they know they're going to win the game. There's no reason to do that. So, again, they were a good team running the ball before Pacheco. They're going to be a good team running the ball without Pacheco. I'm not even using Pacheco in this thought process. They're going to use 3 people to do what Pacheco does. So, outside of the Pacheco situation, I think all of this is expected. Nope, there's no Hollywood Brown and there's no Xavier Worthy running down the sidelines, right? So the whole thought process on Travis Kelce getting more open in the middle hasn't happened because that opportunity has not come. So they're like, you know what? This is our best player right now. Let's not bang him out throughout the season and not be able to use him in the playoffs. So let's just get these other guys involved, see what they have in store, and then we'll slowly funnel it down and pick a certain amount of guys to play when it really matters. So I think that's what's happening with Travis Kelce. But now they're realizing we just lost another player. We're already down one other guy. Our whole team's crumbling. Let's start using the Kelce method again. So I think this is a perfect buy low option for Travis Kelce. It's not going to get better than this. It will not get better than this. So counter offer, maybe leave Debo on there for the injury risk and switch it with somebody else. Jaylen Warren, dude, that guy could take that job in about 2 weeks if everything goes smooth. You should just switch that trade up a little bit and get Kelce on your team, because that's what, especially in our league, that's what you're lacking. It's a tight end. Put that onto the field. You already have plenty of running backs, plenty of wide receivers. You become obvious number 1 choice in winning the league. So I just play that role and switch it up.
And that's what I tried to do. But it just seems like Unnell's value of Travis Kelce right now is too high for me to send what he expects me to send to get him. But that was my thought process is Unnell's in a situation where he is down bad and he's 0-2 and he needs to change. And like you said, my real lacking spot on my team is tight end. So buy low for Travis Kelce, but he's not viewing it as a buy low. He's viewing it as I'm still selling Kelce as the old Travis Kelce, and I'm expecting that in return. I said you could probably get somebody with that, to be honest, but it's not going to be me, unfortunately. So that's where we're at with the Travis Kelce. But Shobit, do you have any concerns? Are you sounding the alarm? Are you staying calm? Do you have any additional thoughts to add with the Travis Kelce situation?
Yeah, man, it's the same thing with the whole theory on the tight ends with Dalton Kincaid or Mark Andrews or anyone. I think you just kind of hold and wait for things to get better. But at the same time, I wouldn't even go out and get Kelce either. So there's nothing I would do. I'm like kind of in the middle where I'm not going out and getting Kelce and I'm not trading him away if he's on my team either. So I just hold and hope for the best.
Fair enough. Another tight end, Sam LaPorta, 2.3 fantasy points, 8.8 through 2 weeks. He did see 88% snap count, up 79% from last week. Only 3 targets, though. 2 catches on 13 yards. 3 targets isn't the problem. It's the fact that Jared Goff threw the football almost 40 times. So LaPorta only saw a 5.5% target share. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 19 targets. Jameson Williams, 11 targets. Jahmyr Gibbs, 7. Monty 4. Khalif Raymond, 4. Tim Patrick from the streets of Denver got 3 targets, and Sam LaPorta also saw 3 targets. So where are we at? I know the tight end landscape is bad. Every tight end's been bad, but there is some level of concern with where you drafted these players and the output that they're producing. No, am I wrong there?
No, absolutely right. There's a reason I had LaPorta last year, won the league because of him. I had Rachaad White last year, won the league because of him. But I'm not stupid. I'm not going to draft those guys again. Those things are situational things. You got to understand your whole team as a whole. Like, no way LaPorta gets 10 touchdowns this year. No way Rachaad White capitalizes on every passing play this year. Like, those things are not likely to happen. It's all about what is most likely to happen. And that's, unfortunately, LaPorta just sitting between tight end number 6 and tight end number 10. That's just what's going to happen, unfortunately.
I would say the thing most likely to happen is probably Isaiah. Shove it. What were you going to say?
No, I mean, it just sucks because you kind of thought this guy's going to be like the Kelce 2.0, right? A younger version of Kelce. And granted, like top, back-to-back tight end 1 finishes is not likely. It's just one of those things where, again, there's nothing you could do about it, and just kind of have to stick with it. And that's what I'm doing right now, because I was one of those guys that drafted Sam LaPorta, and now I'm holding.
Yeah, again, it's 2 weeks. No panic meter for most of these players. But again, he threw the ball so many damn times, and to only see 3 targets, I think that is the concern, especially when last year a lot of plays were funneled through LaPorta. He was the number 1 read even before St. Brown. So hopefully they'll get back to more of that this year.
Yeah, there's also a guy named Levante David who kind of takes care of the middle of the field that he had to go up against. So that plays a huge role in LaPorta getting open too.
Last but not least, we have Brandon Aiyuk, 6.3 fantasy points, 10.1 points through 2 weeks. He did see 87% snap count, up from 60% only last week. 5 targets, 4 for 43, 13.9% target share. Debo saw 10 targets. Kittle saw 8, and Kyle Juszczyk also saw 5. Now we know that Debo is out, so he's going to miss a couple of weeks at least. CMC is still out. So I think maybe this is just going to be a stay calm situation, because a guy that got paid $30 million a year, you expect to eventually produce, especially when one of the premier receivers has now gone down on the team. Do I have any reason to believe that either of you would be panicking on Brandon Aiyuk?
I just don't think he's as good as people think he is, but I'm not panicking. No.
Fair enough.
Same.
Shovit.
No,
same as in same you're not panicking, or same as in you
not
also
panicking. Because as in what? Say it again.
As in you also don't think he's as good as some people think he is, but you're also not panicking.
No, I think he's good. I think he's he's got some really good what's it called when you route trees and things like that. So he's a good receiver. I just feel like with no other options, where else is the ball going to go to? So you kind of have to start.
Yeah, pretty much.
Fair enough. That is this week's Stay Calm or Sound the Alarm. Ran a little long, but those are some players that a lot of people are very concerned with. So definitely worth taking the time. Let's finish up the episode, guys, with our waiver wire watch list. Again, waiver wire runs tonight at 4 a.m., depending on where you live. 2 a.m., I guess. I don't know. Noon or midnight if you're in Pacific time, so it must be nice. But a lot of injuries to highlight real quick. Tua got hurt. Joe Mixon got hurt. Isaiah Pacheco got hurt. Tajay Spears got hurt. Tank Bigsby got hurt. Debo Samuel got hurt. Justin Jefferson got hurt. AJ Brown got hurt. Amon-Ra St. Brown got hurt.
Got hurt.
Got hurt. Cooper Kupp got hurt. Evan Ingram got hurt. Taysom Hill got hurt. So
Dallas
lot of names
got
hurt. Isaiah. Oh, never mind. That's just likely. Damn it. All right. So this week we are talking about obviously players to pick up in light of all of these injuries. These are big names. Some of these guys are week to week. Some of these guys are probably going to play in week 3, but some of these guys absolutely are not going to play. So if you are looking to already have to stream a quarterback, you're looking at Baker Mayfield, who's probably on most waiver wires. He is quarterback 1 through 2 weeks. Now he does take on the Denver Broncos defense, who I think is pretty solid. So I don't know that it's the best matchup per se, but right now Baker Mayfield as quarterback 1, I think you could do a lot worse. They are at home, so Denver has to travel. So I do not dislike that matchup. Derek Carr, another guy on waivers. He's quarterback 2. So quarterback 1 and quarterback 2 are just sitting on waivers for you. He's looked incredible through 2 weeks with Clint Kubiak. Now they take on Philly, who let Jordan Love and Kirk Cousins carve them up when it mattered. So I expect a heavy dose of Derek Carr going deep to Rashid Shaheed and finding Chris Olave and all that. So he is another solid matchup for week 2. Deshaun Watson, another one we talked about. He's not looked amazing from a fantasy perspective, but we do agree that he has built upon his week 1 debut to now what he looked like in week 2. And he's using his legs a lot more. 5 carries in both of his games, and we know how important rushing is. And now he gets Daniel Jones and the New York Football Giants at home. The defense may have to take over as well as the running game, but this is a opportunistic matchup for Watson where he could be very, very efficient throwing the football, maybe only 180 yards and 2 touchdowns or something like that. So pretty favorable matchup. Any other quarterbacks that you guys can think of that are streamable heading into
Sam Darnold?
I've got nothing else.
Just nothing? Just Sam Darnold? 2 words?
Enough said.
Yeah, that offense has looked really good. He's filled in really well, and he still ends up finding Justin Jefferson. So if Justin Jefferson can continue to be productive, then that probably means the quarterback is going to produce as well. So maybe not the worst. Running backs this week, we talked about Isaiah Pacheco being hurt. I think 6 to 8 weeks is what right now the timetable is for him. So obviously IR, which means there's an obvious replacement in the backfield there. Carson Steele, the running back / fullback rookie, runs kind of like Pacheco. He's very, very violent. He's big, physical. I love the way he plays. You have Samaje Perine that they brought in. He's been a very, very nice 3rd down back in the past for a plethora of teams. And then they just signed former Chief Kareem Hunt. So Kareem Hunt now has been signed to the practice squad. Although the thing with Kareem Hunt is a little bit interesting. I think the Chiefs will still find a way to utilize him, but he was pretty bad last year. I mean, I think he was running on like 3 yards a clip. So maybe his best days are behind him. I don't know that he's going to provide the most fantasy value, but out of these 3 players, if you had to use your waiver wire pickup or use some fab on one of them, is there a certain player you're leaning over the other? Shisho?
I'm going to let somebody else have headache. So if I have like the 12th waiver pick, then sure, I'll probably throw it into Kareem Hunt just because there is a potential that he could be an every down back. Neither of these other two guys are every down backs. P. Ryan has never like ran the ball for 20 times a game, and he's more of a pass catcher, third down type of guy. Carson Steele's a pure fullback. All he does is run the ball. So if I'm just looking for straight upside, I'm just randomly having to get one of these guys. I'm going to go with the potential every down possibility of Kareem Hunt playing for the most unique offense in football.
Yeah, in our league, I think Kareem Hunt's already picked up. So between Carson Steele and Samaje Perine, give me Carson Steele. Just another guy I know the Kansas City Chiefs fans love him. He was their punt returner, a kick returner, I believe, and just explosive guy. So I'm going to take the rushing upside. Although Samaje Perine passing upside is definitely there too.
Yeah, there's a world where Samaje becomes the last 2 years what Jerick McKinnon was, who became a insane fantasy player down the stretch. So definitely somebody's going to have value here. It's just kind of a Russian roulette guess in terms of who it's going to be. Rico Dowdle still on a lot of waivers. He's taking out Baltimore this week. Not necessarily the matchup that's you're picking up to start him, but it's another situation where he is clearly a 1A, 1B to Zeke right now, and he is more spry. This could be a shittier version of the Pollard Zeke from a couple years ago. So Rico Dowdle has definitely bye week potential, injury potential as a fill-in for you in the running back spot. And he's a free agent in a lot of leagues. Braylon Allen came in when Breece Hall went out and was very, very effective. Caught the football well, ran the football well. He's very electric. And in a situation where there were times where Breece Hall was on the field, so was Braylon Allen. So the Jets are still trying to figure out this offense. And I expect Aaron Rodgers is smart enough to be like, some of the things that worked where we had both running backs on the field because they were two of our better offensive skill weapons. So is there a world where now Braylon Allen all of a sudden becomes relevant? Certainly. I think he's a guy you should probably go out and stash on your rosters.
Real quick before we move on from Braylon Allen, I know Jayden Daniels was my league winner in the offseason, but I think if this guy touches the field more than, if something happens to Breece Hall, we're looking at a league winner right here. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say, if I had to choose between the two to start, if I was the Jets, I'd probably just go ahead and see. I've seen enough. I have seen enough. Let me just say that. Braylon Allen should get a lot more touches moving forward.
He looked good. He definitely did. But, don't take away from Breece Hall. Did you see that catch that he had? He was good in the receiving game. So Aaron Rodgers probably likes that. So unless injuries happen, I'm still, I wouldn't start Braylon Allen. I don't think that this, dual backfield will work in that sense for fantasy.
Joe Mixon has a potential high ankle sprain is what it looked like, but now they're saying he's day-to-day and could play. The injury definitely looked like a high ankle sprain, which as much as we've done this now, it's usually 3 to 4 weeks. So if that's anything, Cam Akers is probably next in line to get carries for that team. He looked better than Pierce. Pierce is still hurt. So Cam Akers is somebody else that is a waiver wire option for you. Chuba Hubbard, another guy, not sexy, but he is taking on the Las Vegas Raiders, and he had a better week in week 2. And the biggest news there is it's no longer Bryce Young. It is now Andy Dalton. The expectation, hopefully, is that there is more movement with the football. I definitely think it will be. I think Dalton's going to be able to at least orchestrate the offense, get some of the receivers like Deontay Johnson going, which should turn his season around as well. But this makes Chuba Hubbard now more of a fill-in option than last week when I, quite frankly, dropped him from my roster because he was so bad and the team was so bad. Antonio Gibson is another one I'm going to throw in there real quick. Crazy, just random usage that he got looked really good. He is still the backup to Rhamondre Stevenson, but he is somebody that, again, if you're desperate, like I'm looking at Ishan's team that I'm playing this week, and he does not have like 2 legitimate starting running backs to
Spears
already, and Spears is hurt too. So there may be a world where Ishan is having to start somebody like Antonio Gibson. So he takes on the Jets. You think the Jets are going to play smash mouth, hard-nosed defensive football, maybe some pass catches for Gibson out of the backfield there. Any other running backs that I might have missed that you guys had thought of?
I mean, I don't know how many people have Ty Chandler, but I think it's time to start picking up Ty Chandler and making him be on 100% rosters.
Yeah, Ty Chandler's another guy that looks really electric behind Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is a guy that never plays a full season, so injuries are expected, and that's when Chandler will fill in pretty nicely. And he's already getting good carries. So
Bucky Irving, right, with the Rachaad White injury, I don't think he had an efficient day, and I'm not really sure where Rachaad White is with that injury, but he's a guy that needs to be on benches for sure.
Oh yeah,
yeah. It looks like a minor groin injury, and groin injuries can probably be nagging. So definitely Bucky Irving is somebody that out of everybody we talked about, ironically, I'd probably have him top of the waiver wires in terms of running backs if Bucky Irving is still a free agent.
Yeah, Bucky Irving's already near 50% timeshare. Like he's already close to that. He's barely a backup at this point.
Yep. Wide receivers, Quentin Johnston emerged, 2 touchdown catches. He takes on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Really good defense. Joey Porter and gang. Not somebody I would start. Not somebody I would probably personally even pick up, to be honest. But again, there are crazy 16, 18 team league freak shows out there who have 7 flex spots, and maybe you want to pick up Quentin Johnston there. So otherwise, I am not touching that. Next on the list, I think Juwan Jennings actually makes a lot more sense than Quentin Johnston. He is going to be the wide receiver 2 for the 49ers. He's a very serviceable player. He's always been there and always reliable when called upon. Right now, he's going to be the wide receiver 2 with Deebo Samuel injured. And they take on the Rams, who don't look that great, quite frankly. So Juwan Jennings is another target there. Speaking of the Rams, Demarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson, those are the guys that saw the field the most once Puka and Cooper Kupp went down. Tutu Atwell saw the field a little bit as well. Jordan Whittington saw the field as well. But if you're going in terms of snap count, it was Demarcus Robinson and Tyler Johnson. So if you're really wanting to bank on one of those guys, those are probably the names to look out for. 92% and 87% on the field to lead the wide receivers for that team. And Jerry Jeudy. Interesting enough, I never thought I'd have to say the words Jerry Jeudy in fantasy football ever again. Jerry Jeudy had 8 targets and 6 targets, 10 points and 9.8 points. And he's actually showing some rapport with Deshaun Watson, which I didn't think was possible. So if anything, he becomes relevant because we're waiting for Amari Cooper to reemerge there. And right now, while he's not, Jerry Jeudy is, and they take on the Giants next week. So you could do a lot worse probably in a random start than Jerry Jeudy against the Giants next week. Any other wide receivers that I might have forgotten? No? Real quickly, the tight ends, Hunter Henry had a big week, but this is Hunter Henry every year, has one random spike week and then just does nothing. If you want to be the guy right now because tight ends are so bad, go for it. He takes on the Jets next week. You have Jonnu Smith, another one that I think is a little bit intriguing. His snap count continues to go up. Durham Smythe has had like 2 or 3 massive drops. He's obviously the more of the blocking tight end for when they run a lot, but Jonnu Smith is a freak athlete. And we've seen even last year on a team that had Kyle Pitts, they use Jonnu Smith more. So I think with no Tua, with Skylar Thompson, there's a world where he's featured even more as an underneath dump off kind of guy. So, and if we expect them to be losing more because there's no Tua, again, playing from behind, a lot of dump off work, you could probably do a lot worse. I mean, I started Colby Parkinson and I started Taysom Hill and they both were bad. So I would certainly throw a flyer on Jonnu Smith.
And throw a flyer at Zach Ertz. I don't know how many times I got to say this. Just do it. Just do it. All you people that are just digging around for tight ends, this is going to be your safest net.
Yep. Zach Ertz, and then shove it your guy, Pat Freiermuth, another guy. Again, horrible. 4.7 fantasy points week 1, 5.9 fantasy points week 2. But guess what, guys? That is good enough for tight end 11s.
Wow.
So that is how bad the tight ends are. Go pick up Pat Freiermuth. He is still a free agent, and he's a top 12 tight end right now. Real quickly, defenses, I'll run through them super quick. Las Vegas Raiders, they are taking on the Carolina Panthers. Again, 2 things. I think the Raiders defense is good, standalone. Carolina obviously changed. They are no longer Bryce Young Carolina. They're Andy Dalton. Yeah. That offense will look better for sure. It for sure will look better, but I still think the Raiders at home against Carolina are a pretty strong defensive play. The Chicago Bears take on the Indianapolis Colts. We saw about how that offense looked against the Packers defense. Again, I'm a big Bears defense guy, and they are at home in Chicago. So I like the Bears defense there. Tennessee defense takes on Malik Willis and the Green Bay Packers, another really good defense that made the Bears offense look absolutely atrocious in week 1. So that's another option. Bo Nix is taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense, who also made Jared Goff and gang look very human. So another option that I like. And then the Cincinnati Bengals defense is taking on the Washington Commanders. Don't like this as much, but Trey Hendrickson is a freak. He has been making it really, really difficult for offensive linemen. And we know the Commanders are in a situation where they have to throw the football a lot because they're down. And Jaden Daniels runs a lot, which means he takes a lot of sacks. So there are opportunities there. And my last one, guys, my final one, I don't care if you think I'm a homer, but this is legit. The Minnesota Vikings defense against who? The Houston Texans. You're joking, right? CJ Stroud, Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, Nico Collins, Joe Mixon. Why would you ever start a defense against them? Because the Minnesota Vikings defense is the real deal. This Bears defense did a great job against Houston, and I think the Vikings defense actually has a better scheme. I don't know that their players are better, but they have a better defensive scheme. I think Brian Flores will do a fantastic job. They're going to limit the points, whether it's big plays, whatever. I just think points are going to be hard to come by. And right now, I don't know that there's a better defense in the NFL than the Minnesota Vikings. So call me a homer. But if you don't start them this week, this is definitely a defense that needs to be rostered ASAP and probably started in most every single week. Any thoughts on defenses?
Maybe I like the Buffalo defense against Jacksonville too. Buffalo is really not rostered in a lot of leagues just because of the matchups they've had so far. They started off the year playing against the Dolphins and whatnot, but I think I'm big Fugazi, Jacksonville, crappy guy.
Yeah, no, it's a solid list. I like the Chicago Bears out of all of those personally because they're playing against the Colts. That's probably going to be the best matchup, but good list.
That is it, guys. That is the long version of that episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Week 2 recap. Again, we are back tomorrow to preview Week 3, so the grind does not stop. If you're watching, hit the like, hit the subscribe. You can listen to us everywhere you get your podcast. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok at The Only Playbook. I'm Sweetcard. That is Shashot. That is Shovit. Those are our Twitter handles. Give us a follow if you like to see weird shit. Have a fantastic week. We will see you guys tomorrow.